Hey, we are live. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. This is a video podcast which explores the many different ways in which stories are told on film. And today we are going to be talking football movies. We got North Dallas 40, which is with Nick Nolte, and it was directed by Ted Kotcheff. It also has Charles Durning, Dale Haddon, Gervais, Dwayne Spraden. I'm probably saying that wrong. And we also have Friday Night Lights, directed by Peter Berg, with Billy Bob Thornton, Lucas Black, and Derek Luke, and Garrett Hedlund. They're both big ensemble pieces. And my guest today is Johnny Augustine, who plays in the CFL here in Canada, the Canadian Football League, for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and they won the 2019 Grey Cup here in Canada. So, Johnny, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I really look forward to it.
No, me too. So we were talking about how whether or not these films are accurate to what football players or even athletes in general go through. So starting with Friday Night Lights, which is from 2004, what stood out to you as being really accurate to what your experience as a football player has been?
So right away, what stood out to me is how much pressure a lot of the players were going through. You had Don Billingsley, the fullback, where his dad was, pressuring him because his dad was a former star football player.
Yeah.
Or the star quarterback Mike with his mother trying to go to university, or the famous Booby Miles, which I was called back in high school.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So funny enough because of the high haircut.
But yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But just all the pressure they were each going through, so that me as a football player, we're always under pressure, right? From high school to university to the pro level, and I've been fortunate enough where my parents cared more about my grades as opposed to football.
Right.
But I've seen where other parents in sports were really involved, right? And you can tell that really dragged on to the individual player, whoever it was. And unfortunately, some guys, that's really hard on them, having that type of pressure. And unfortunately, they might not pursue football anymore. So I really felt like when they each were going through it, all that type of pressure, that was very real in terms of, football, where we go through that each and every day.
Well, that's what shocked me so much, because in not North Dallas 40, Friday Night Lights, they're it's funny that they're only in high school. This is a high school football league, but in the small town, it meant everything to the people who live there, to these players. And there also was this really sort of narrow-minded view of when they saw some of the players who had won the championship before. Well, guys, this is going to be it. You've got your babies and memories are all that's up next, and so they have this bleak future that they're looking at, and it was almost as if they felt if they didn't win, they would be losers. Like everyone was making them feel like winning was everything, and the opposite side of that is pure losing. Is pure you're just, oh, you lost, you failed. Is that something that you've experienced? Is it very black and white in that sense?
It's not. You know what? Compared to the movie, it was all about winning, right?
Right.
And we revealed that even the head coach himself, Gaines, he, it was all about winning, and then towards the end, realized it's not all about winning. But with that being said, to answer your question, nowadays they understand that there are going to be tough competition, right? We are going to lose some games.
Yeah.
It's hard to have a perfect season, right? I would say that we strive for perfection, and they really try to drill that in us. But in terms of being very black and white, where you saw how dedicated it was. I think it's harder too when the city and town that you play for is all about football. So, for example, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that I play for, football at West is crazy. They love their fans. Saskatchewan, it's all about the Rough Riders because they have no other sports team in Saskatchewan.
Right.
It's literally the Rough Riders, and that's it. Whereas in Winnipeg, it's just us. You have the Jets, but it's all about us. But over here, me being honest with you, like the Toronto Argonauts, they don't get a lot of love, right? I remember I had a former player when they won the Grey Cup in 2016 or 2015. Some people don't even know that. He's just like, yeah, we had a parade and barely anyone was there. Some people don't even know I won the Grey Cup, right? And it comes down to what city, how dedicated the fans are. That's when it really applies into, okay, we really want to win because this is all we live for, right?
Yeah. I mean, I like I said, that's what's so shocking about it, because it doesn't even matter whether, I mean, in your case, you're playing in a professional league, but have you, because you've been playing, were you playing in high school as well?
Yeah, I've been playing. So I started playing football in grade 9. So funny enough, and why I can really relate to Friday Night Lights is because I actually grew up in Florida, and I played high school football for a couple years in Florida. So also too, like I said, it all depends in what area you are in and how dedicated, that winning mentality, or how much we live and die for it. Because when I was in the States in high school, I was playing in front of 40,000 people. When I moved to Canada, I was playing in front of a couple hundred people. That's it. The culture is different.
Right.
Down south, football is, you breathe by it, you live by it. And also too, when I talked in the, like what's so real, how I said the pressure that these players are under nowadays, players realize how much doors playing pro football can open for them financially, right? The money that is involved in it, right? And the parents see that. They see that as their way as being financially free. They won't say it, but it's just that influence and that pressure, right? Like this is our dream. Like Booby Miles, you could see like this is it. And that's where that, like, depending on the area you're from or where you're playing at, it really puts that pressure in those players in circumstances.
Well, yeah, I mean, you certainly saw that, which when I saw that this was high school, I thought, why aren't they just getting enough excitement from watching NFL, but
it's almost honestly, Rob, in high school, especially in the States, when I played it, it's almost like it was our job.
Yeah. No, you could feel that. And these poor young, teenagers in the film are, you see how it's affecting their mental health too. Like just trying to keep it together, but breaking under pressure. Where like the guy who was taking care of his mother, whose mother was unwell, like he eventually, in front of the coach, just starts to crack. And there were, especially I'm sure you remember that scene where the scouts come over and they were like, we'll sign right now, and then he's like, oh, we're just interested. But I know what you mean. It meant everything. Like, it's so much like, if you don't make this happen, that's going to be it for you. But like I said earlier, they also made them feel like even if they won, that was also going to be it, that you're just going to have these memories. So it was sort of one or the other. And every time they lost, I mean, you see in some of those dressing rooms, like the crying, and the shame, and I mean, have you experienced that, where one loss would hit someone that badly?
I mean, I've been in those situations where I'm upset, I've cried. I remember we lost a big playoff game in high school, and it got so, to me personally, I'm very like to myself, so sometimes I won't kind of let it out. And I remember being on the bus, like, pretty upset, pretty crying. And one of the guys on the team, was shouting and, screaming and, saying he's pissed off. And all this and that. It was very emotional, very intense, because the thing is too about football, or just that team profession sport, it's 50 guys or something, right? You're gonna deal with different emotions. Everyone handles it differently, right? And I just remember, like, he was screaming and I just screamed right back at him. It was just so emotional, right? Like, that we lost that game. Especially, like, it is memories. Like, it's funny because watching that movie Friday Night Lights, it's like you win and you have those memories and that's it. You lose, it's like you don't have those memories and that's it.
You make them feel like they have nothing.
Yeah, they feel right. So it really hits the players. And I've been in locker rooms where I'm on my high and I'm like extremely happy we've won the championship. And I've been in locker rooms where we've lost and there's crying and it's very emotional, especially when it's your last rodeo, in terms of, that's the finish line for you. Like, you're not going to play university or pro, or you know what I mean? It's into the real world or whatever, right? Like, you're in grade 9, you have grade 10 to look forward to, right? So that kind of motivates you. Whereas other guys, like, because all those guys were in their senior years, right? And I remember losing my last game my senior year, how emotional that was, knowing that I'm not coming back to play high school football. And that's that, right? So very relatable.
I could understand like a championship game or playoff, but it was amazing to me that any loss would bring them to that level of pain. Also, just by the way in which the coaches reacted. I mean, we see a lot of criticizing and screaming and. I mean, how does that really motivate anyone? I mean, to me, that I wonder how the screaming and yelling and bullying and stuff. I mean, does that motivate players, or is it just normal? Is it just the way it's been for so long? I mean, or has that changed, do you think?
I think when we get on to the next movie and talk about North Dallas 40,
that one's even worse.
But it gives a good explanation of what you just asked me. How does that motivate, that player, whoever? Everyone's different. And I'm not trying to get ahead of North Dallas 40, but there's a scene where they're screaming, they're hollering, and the coach is freaking out. And you see one guy just going crazy as well, and then the other guy just relaxing. Like, I admit that doesn't get me fired up.
Right.
When the coaches are screaming, going crazy, and the other guys are going crazy, I need to be in a calm space. I need to control my emotion. So it all comes down to each individual, and you can see that. You can see the guys, who have to take the smelling salts and get all riled up, and then you have other guys who just, have their music, need to be calm. It just comes down to the player. The coach, at the end of the day, however he delivers it, that's how he delivers it. Each player interprets the message how they interpret it.
Oh, I see.
Even if my coach is screaming, because I've had different coaches who don't necessarily, scream to the top of the lungs, where the other one is, kind of more calm, right? It's how the players interpret it at the end of the day.
I see. Because Billy Bob Thornton, he's sort of in this film grows. I mean, he's under similar pressure as well. When they lose, he gets trashed on the radio. They think he's getting paid too much. He also is, when the players are not going well, will start to insult them and call them names. But then, as we saw later on, I mean, I love what he says to them at the end, in terms of, it's not about winning and losing. It's about looking at each other and saying that you did all you could, and how you are as a person, how you relate to people, how you feel about your friends and family, and who you are, not in terms of I won, I lost. And I thought, like, incredible for someone in that environment to be much more progressive in his advice. How did you feel when that scene towards the end happened?
Yeah, so you know what? Because I mentioned early on how the players are under pressure. It's not just the players. It's the
Yeah.
whole coaching staff.
Yeah.
Everybody's under pressure, right? So when moments are tense, you really feel it. And I felt it. Like, I felt it, through my coaching staff, through, my teammates. But that scene towards the end, I'm just going to say, like, as it is, there are certain movies that definitely, make me feel emotional. And that was one of the scenes that did, make me, I felt it because you can see how during the season, when the season progresses, you see how, the players change and the coaches change, right? And, the head coach Gaines, at the beginning, you could tell he was there to win, and that was it. And he knew what he had to do.
Yeah.
And like, it's almost like his players were just his employees, and that was it.
Yeah. He's much tougher at first.
And I felt that because at times I felt like I wasn't valued as an individual. I was valued as more as for my talents and my skills,
right,
and how I can produce. And I felt that at the beginning of the movie, how they were just valued for their talents and skills. He kept yelling at the quarterback, "Can you win this? Like, can you do this?" Right. But like, did you actually get a chance to sit down and know how he feels? Because we're all going through things in battles, right? And towards the end, when you saw that he changed and said it's not just about winning, right?
Yes.
That scene for me was very monumental because it comes to show you that we have grown, not just football, team sports, how we've grown to understand the players. And that is a real thing now. We care about each and every one of us, of the players, right? There's counseling. Like, it's so for me, that was a big thing because I have been in circumstances where I never felt like I was valued as a person, just a football player.
Yeah, no, I'm relieved to hear that's improved so much because I wonder sometimes if the insulting players and ripping them up is a way to hit at their insecurities, and then that'll motivate them. Is that what you think? That is sort of grounded in?
I wouldn't say grounded in. You definitely need thick skin in the locker room. Some days you're not going to want to hear things, coaches or whoever might be on you and might be yelling at you. And like I said, I really relate back to how that individual player takes it because we're all different, right? Like you can see some guys get screamed at, get yelled at, and they're affected by it. Like their performance is actually affected by it. Whereas different guys, don't necessarily get fazed by it because it's not necessarily it's the same thing, but you expect those things because you're not going to be perfect all the time. You're going to make mistakes.
Of course.
And sometimes the coaches are on you, and it can be draining. You know what I mean? It can be draining, but at the end of the day, it's how do you respond to that? I've personally responded in different ways. I've grown as a player and as an individual. Before, when I first played football, that emotionally did get to me. I thought about it. And I remember Don Billingsley, the fullback, where he fumbled the ball, and you could tell like it was in his head, and he got screamed at by his dad and the coaching staff.
Oh yeah.
I remember I had a moment early on in my football career where I fumbled, and all I thought was, "Don't fumble," and like. You know what I mean? It was in my head where now is because fumbling the football as a running back, you don't want to do that.
No, right? Of course not.
It's like dropping your baby. But
good
now
point.
As a professional, as an adult, as a man and grown individual, I don't linger on that thing. Even if it were to happen and someone were to coach, you scream at me, I just got to go on. So it comes down to how they take it and the maturity in that sense.
You bring up that relationship with the young man whose father was such a bully. It's hard to. I mean, people who bully were bullied, and he was even talking about how his father
Yep.
did that to him. I mean, I really like the film. I mean, it's a little more commercial in the sense that like even that guy changes so easily. You see towards the end when even when the team loses, he gives him his ring and hugs him. I mean, it's very quick, but still, it just those things hit me. I mean, it's done sentimentally, but it really hit me because ultimately that's what you want the father to do. Like, what do you like? He was taping up his hands to make sure that he doesn't drop the ball. Breaking windows. It was so brutal, and he doesn't think that his son understands why. Do you think that's just a guy who was bullied, so he doesn't know anything else other than to bully to motivate his son, or is it more that he's miserable because all he has is that memories, and that's not good enough, or it could be a combination of the two?
I'd say it's a combination of the two. He was definitely bullied because in the scene he says, my dad did this to me and would just hit me in the stomach until I really felt it, right?
Yeah.
So that right away made me realize, like, he was bullied and he's just putting it on his son. But also too, right? Like, I mean, I'm not a parent. I don't have a kid, but like, it's like when you are the person that was high level or whatever, right? Like there comes that pressure for your kid to perform at a high level, right? And it's like you can tell that when his son wasn't performing or to the task, that was bothering him, right? And he was taking that anger and frustration on his son, let alone being bullied. So that's where the combination of both comes into play, right?
Yeah, the two of them were two of the most upsetting scenes. It's just that relationship. Particularly as you mentioned, Boopy, the character of Boopy. I mean, God, I mean that scene when he can't play anymore in the car with his uncle. Oh my God! I mean that's what I remember the most about this movie. I've seen it a couple of times, but just to have your dreams squashed because of an injury. And, when he says, I wanted to buy you a house and we were going to go to the pros and now it's over. And then there's just that wide shot of the field, the stadium behind them, and you just see them in the car hugging. That it kills me. It's so beautifully acted. He was also in Antoine Fisher. I forget the actor's. I wrote it down here. The actor's name, Derek Luke. Really, apparently he was actually 30 when he did that. He's playing like 17. Wow. But yeah, it's hard to believe because he was so great. And he was also, I loved how he was like, he was getting the scholarship. He was also getting a scholarship purely for football. Like you could see he wasn't the best student, they made it obvious. But again, as you said, some of these cities or towns value the sports so much.
Well, it's funny you say that. Sorry to cut you off. It's funny.
No, go ahead.
Because even in the scene in the movie, when they were losing, the commentator that was doing the broadcasting for the football games was saying, they're losing so bad, they suck so bad. I think they're focusing too much on their schoolwork and not football.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So that even says that to you there.
Yeah. That says it all. But it really stood out to me that every tackle, every time you go down, it could just be all over. I mean, you see that happen to Booby. Have you seen people get hurt that they can't play anymore?
I've seen some serious injuries. He had an ACL injury. I mean, nothing to the extent where like the guy's career was over. I've obviously seen articles or watched games, but like actually in the environment, I haven't seen that. But the worst thing in football though is injuries. It's part of the game. And I felt that scene too, Rob. Like when like that's what he was all there for. Like you're taking away his talent. Like like my job is professional football. That means my body needs to be physically in shape. So when I can't move, like that's taken away from what I can do. And
Yeah.
I admit injuries does put some guys in a really dark place. So for Booby, especially somebody that performs at a high level like him, I really felt that. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so heartbreaking because where do you go from there? I mean, this is a true story. I mean, they say at the end that he had a family and twins. I like how they ended it with him, bringing the Christmas tree to his uncle. Obviously, that speech of relating to your family and friends did something to him that made him see that there are, of course, there are other things out than purely what you do. So I wonder what happened to that guy, the real guy, afterwards. I'm sure that's something that can possibly be Googled. But yeah, it was so heartbreaking. That scene was just was so gut wrenching. But yeah, it's such a powerful film. The only thing I found is that Peter Berg, who directed it, he's pretty good. He did a lot of kind of small independent films before this, and the only I don't know if you found sometimes the camera was so shaky a lot of the movie, like it was there was a lot of bumpiness. It wasn't too distracting, but other than that, it's such a well crafted movie, and I think it's really universal in the sense that you don't have to be both the movies we're talking about, you don't have to be a football player to relate to losing a dream, to relate to being put under such pressure even at a young age, to get ahead. I mean, that's essentially it's essentially a coming of age story of these guys looking. Everyone's giving them a bleak look at life, and thank God they see something towards the end that is not so bleak. And even when they lose, there certainly was a team spirit. I mean, between them, there certainly was a love between them. And I think at the end it said only one of them when he played got a scholarship, right? Like only one of them.
Yeah, only one of them. Well, mind you, from high school level, it especially in the States, it is really hard to even, let alone pro, get a division scholarship to a university in the state, right? So that's why at the end of the movie, it only said one guy was able to do that. And then some other guys, like, the quarterback, he got a community college one, but nothing crazy. But I will say this in terms of, the essence of, how, them being under pressure and everything that they were going through, that it's not just about winning. The thing is, eventually everyone becomes an adult and goes into the real world when you finish university or college. I'm not saying this because I'm a pro football player and I've played football a lot in my life or whatever, but it has prepared me and matured me for life.
Oh, I bet. And
that environment that, these football players are in at such a young age, and you're thinking a lot of, people watching this film, like, how can, yell at this kid, or how can almost like this isn't an employee at a job or something. You know what I mean? It's just it's insane that these kids are going through all these circumstances. Meanwhile, the average student is, focusing on their academics, just being a kid, going to parties or whatever. Obviously they go to parties too, but they have that football part, right? And dealing with the coaches, having the coaching staff, watching the film, all this and that, it's just, on them. But isn't that sometimes what we have to deal with in real life if we got a job or whatever it may be? I mean, after playing high school football, after playing university football, I'm as a man, as an individual, I was so mature in some of the jobs that I had to do because I've been in.
We're so disciplined.
Yeah, it was just, and that's the thing, is the discipline, right? Like the amount of work that they have to put in. It's like it prepared me, right? I was ready when things weren't going our way or whatever the task may be at work or when I was dealing with real life circumstances. I've been in this locker room, when emotions are flying, I know how to deal with that, you know? So that's what I would say is like, yeah, it's tough, especially they're only high school kids. But the amount of guys that I know that, you know, have played football for a long time, how mature they are and what they do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I can certainly see how much value, whether or not someone goes on to perhaps be a professional football player. I can see how much value one would gain from that sense of practice, discipline, being reliable, hardworking. Yeah, like you said, under pressure. I mean, those are amazing life skills. So, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's a wonderful movie with a beautiful message, and you know, this is on Netflix. You can find it on Netflix for anyone who hasn't seen it. Did you have any other final thoughts on this movie?
No, I mean, yeah, it is on Netflix. It's a great film. It's probably, honestly, if not number one of the top 2 best football movies ever. So,
do football players ever talk about like what are the best football movies? Is that something that kind of goes around? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And Friday Night Lights is the number one. I don't know why I'm blanking on the second one. It's with Denzel Washington, but
We Are. Is it what We Are? Is that no? We Are Marshals? Is it? I can't remember the title.
Titans. I forgot. But
it's Remember the Titans. Remember the Titans.
So those are considered the best 2. It's just known. Like you talk about it. So Friday Night Lights is a must.
No, for sure. And it's only from 2004, so it's not so old. So I can understand how particularly your generation would be talking a lot about that.
Very relatable, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to North Dallas 40, which is somewhat. There are definitely similarities, but this is with Nick Nolte, and it was. This is directed by Ted Kotcheff. He's actually from Toronto, Canada, where we are right now. And Charles Durning is in it. Dale Haddon, who's the love interest, she's from Toronto as well. And this gentleman's name I find hard to say. He was the coach, Gervais Dwan Sprodlin, I believe. He was also in
Coach BA.
Yeah, he was in a lot of big films in the 70s. Godfather Part 2 and Apocalypse Now. I haven't seen him in too. I'll have to look him up, but he was so good as the coach. So this was your first viewing of this one. What do you think was the essence of this film? Was it simply just showing people what it's like to be an athlete?
Yeah. You know, I kind of had this early discussion with you. Yeah, it was the first time me watching that one. You know, for me, Friday Night Lights was more relatable because some of those circumstances does happen, and I've experienced it in my generation. Whereas North Dallas 40, you don't see that necessarily happens in the locker room or around the environment that I'm in, right? But then again, I've talked to older guys who played football back in the 80s or 70s, and it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very old school, the way they did things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, enough knowledge, not enough science. It's just do this, do that, whatever. Recovery, just even how they took care of their body, how, you know, Phil, you know, would get up and just, you know what I mean? Like, it's so totally different to what we do now. They, you know, like, we have to come in, we have to get our massage, whatever it may be, right? So for me, I think, you know, personally, it was kind of extreme, but I believe that some of that did probably happen back then, but now it's not that close to what happens. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I didn't think so. I mean, this movie came out in 1979, but it's based on a memoir of a football player who played on the Dallas Cowboys. And I think it was somewhat controversial as well that a lot of this was getting out about, you know, like you had said, like the painkillers that they were taking and the drugs in order to deal with, you know, that their bodies are just, you know, absolutely battered. I mean, it opens with Nick Nolte waking up just
Yeah.
you know, in so much pain. But what I like about this is it's really about an aging player. I mean, everyone else is
Still young.
besides him and a couple of guys are much younger. You see at that party scene, which is an insane scene, and they're you know they're huge womenizers and big party animals. And Nick Nolte, you could tell that he perhaps was like that, but he's sort of over it. Like he's just you know he's just trying to get through it. But I mean, yeah, the coaches were just treating them like children, really. I mean, I thought the dynamics were so childlike, and you know, putting their like if they lost, it was down to the stats. Well, this shouldn't happen because the computer says this or that. I mean, it was so 2 + 2 = 4. I mean, they had no empathy for them. They had no compassion, and they didn't value them at all. You know, I mean, did that really stand out to you?
So the film, that was a good one. That one is more relatable. So in terms of one of the things we do as players is we're always watching film. We're always game planning against our opponents. Even reviewing the day after, you know, the game when we played with somebody. And they're there, you know, because Phil had caught a game-winning touchdown and, you know, by fluke or whatever, you know, and obviously the players are like happy, they're shouting, and coach was like, not good enough, right?
Yeah.
The computer said this and this and that.
Yeah.
In terms of being, you know, relatable is when we watch film, we're not watching the best plays. We're not watching the touchdowns. We're watching each and everyone's mistakes and our mistakes. You know, it's almost we're trying to strive for perfection.
Right.
You know, obviously that it's not necessarily attainable, but that's what they're always pinning on us, right? I've been in meeting rooms before in front of, you know, my peers being chewed out and yelled at by the coach because I made a mistake on film, right? It was in that circumstance, I felt that one because I knew what they were going through, right? And I remember one of the players who got cut because he made a mistake on film or didn't know what he was doing. His response to the coach was, I wasn't sure what I was doing, coach. And then as you can see after the scene, he's like, can I have a word with you? And he got cut.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because
it's cutthroat. I mean, Jesus.
Because we like to say the film doesn't lie.
Right.
And it's funny because you hear guys, you know, they're like not necessarily worried about like they did this and that. They're worried about if they make a mistake. Sometimes we laugh and we say, crap, I'm not looking forward to film. Oh my God, they're gonna see film, right? Because we know they'll see those mistakes, right? And,
oh wow.
And that's one of those pressures is there's film everywhere, right? Like back then, it's funny because watching that film, I was surprised that they actually were watching film of themselves, right? Because that's all we have. Everything's on the computer. You know, during practice, we'll have 8 different cameras all around us, right? Like we can't sneeze without the camera looking at us, right? And, you know, I make a mistake. It's like, I admit sometimes if I make a mistake, I'm like, man, on Sunday, got to watch this film. And man, and the thing is too, the way our group setting is, it's, we watch the film as individuals and then we watch the film with our whole entire coaching staff and peers. So that was, So, you know, and like I said, I admit I've had a bad game or two and I've been yelled at and, you know, it's not fun. Right. And
no,
I like to say too, we're the only job or profession. And I'm not even saying for just football, maybe professional sports that where our boss can technically yell at us. Right.
That's right.
You know, I've seen guys who are 35, 40 years old. So think about it. Seth, the quarterback, and Phil, they're older guys. They're older veterans, right? Like they clearly aren't the young guys. They've done their part, but they're still getting treated as kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen that. I remember coming at the pro level and university or high school, everyone's around my age, where now it's like there's big age gaps where like, there's a guy on my team who's like, close to 40 or whatever. And I've seen him make a mistake and then coach yell at him. He's close to 40, 30, whatever. And he has 2 or 3 kids and is married. And it's like, you won't find another job where, your boss can literally yell at you like that. It's just part of it's just part of it. You know what I mean? You take it as it is, and that's that. And that was definitely a defining moment for me my rookie year. In 2018, when I seen a couple, older guys get yelled at, and I'm like, wow, like, it happens to all of us.
Yeah, that really stood out to me. I didn't realize that. I mean, again, the film is 1979, but it takes place in the 60s, and I didn't realize they were using that kind of technology even back then.
Yeah, that surprised me too.
Yeah, even down to like computers, like the stats, and the computer says this. Like, I thought that was more of like a fairly new thing.
So the thing is, we actually have that, so that's why it surprised me. Like, we'll get our play call. When we're game planning against opponents, they have it to a T. They can even tell you. We joke about it. We can even tell you who that individual player's mother is. Yeah. Like, seriously, we have the statistics of, what they do on 3 and 2, like by the inches, right? Like those stats are like actual, right? Like they're so precise. So for me, when I saw that in the film, I was like, wow, they really were, this been around for a while now. But obviously we're a little bit more ahead with our technology.
Yeah, I had no idea that really. I was like, geez, I mean, no one, this is before anyone had a computer at home, way before anyone had a computer at home. So to see the coach talking to Nick Nolte, just like typing everything in, and I just was like, wow. So they've had this, they really have had this for a while. But you also see like, the biz, like, this stood out more for me, the business. Like you saw like the executives and the guys who own the team, and how they were trying to basically get rid of Nolte, and investigated him to just get rid of his contract because he was older. And it's amazing to me that they justified that as saying he didn't have team spirit, or he wasn't giving anything to the game. And meanwhile, it's like his body, his like, I mean, these guys were so consumed by the sport that they didn't have anything else. I mean, he even said, him and his friend even say, they haven't loved anyone. They don't know how to love anyone. I mean, it's still like they had the mentality of people who are 20 or just under 20, just by football. And of course, that woman who's his love interest really kind of hammers him on that in a way which I don't think anyone else really had up until that point. I mean, have you seen? I mean, are people so consumed like or has that changed? I mean, these guys had no life outside of it. Is that something you still see in sports or in football, anyways?
So that was also another thing too, in terms of Friday Night Lights. These kids like saw the end of high school. Like I told you, like, let alone is it hard to make it to the pros, it's hard to make it to the university. So now you got pros who've played, Pop Warner football, some of them 7 years old. Then you got high school, they make it on to the next level at university, and now they're pros, they're getting paid for it. That's really what they all know. The thing is, they just haven't started that aspect of life.
Exactly.
Working in a corporation, whereas the guy in high school has started that part and comes to reality and understand that this happens, and starts to bring all the things that he went through in football, like the discipline, the hard work that we talked about, and starts incorporating it. But the reason why I'm able to see both sides is because nowadays, as a pro athlete and playing in the league, you can see how we've not just made football our only thing. I honestly, if you meet me, I won't tell you. If you don't know me and you meet me, I won't tell you I play pro football. It's not coming out of my mouth. It doesn't. I will say what I do outside of that, whether it's personal training, whether it's real estate, all that stuff. That's what I will say. Majority of the times, they will find out either through someone else. I don't want to be defined as a football player. And I think that guys diversify themselves. I play in the CFL. And, I don't play in the NFL. Guys in the NFL, they're making millions or whatever, so they can focus on that 24/7.
Right.
Whereas the CFL, guys, we'll have other jobs, we'll have other avenues. And I think, to be honest with you, that is a blessing because you see how we're able to transition after football. Whereas in the movie, it was a hard transition for them. And I think it was a hard transition for the guys back then. Whereas now the transition is a bit better because, like I said, outside of football, I have other, ventures and avenues that I do. So for me, obviously I'm still young and I probably got some good years left in me. But I know that when I do retire, that I will be okay. I just lost a season because of COVID. Season was canceled. I was upset, but I was okay because of the other avenues I had, right? I've put myself in that position where it's not just all about football. And I think, like you see in the movie that it was tough for them because that's all they knew.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays it's a bit better. I still see it sometimes, where some guys, it's all football, especially because now you're at the pro level and you're getting paid for it. And some guys just focus strictly on that. And I have nothing against that because I was like that too. But those are the guys that tend to have a tougher time in transition.
Yeah, that's another way in which this film is relatable because they happen to be football players who are perhaps so consumed, but people can be workaholics in so many ways. I know just being in the arts, people can be very, very obsessed, with their careers and everything like that. Or you can be in the corporate field, the head of a company, and be working all day and weekends, and there's so much pressure in so many ways. That's what I love so much about these two films. It's not they're football movies. It shows you what it's like to be a football player, but there's so much that is human and relatable, and that anyone could really see themselves in. I also love the moments they had before the game when everyone was just has to wait for the game to play, and just the anxiety, and they were all dealing with it in different ways, whether they're meditating or punching lockers or.
Well, that's what I told you in Friday Night Lights. How does these players react to the coaches yelling at them? That's the scene. That's right there. Where it's you just see it. You get that guy who's really nervous and is puking his guts out in the washroom. That happens. I see that.
Oh, I bet.
And you get the guys that are just rock and roll, gone crazy, smashing their heads, you know what I mean? Just like those two offensive linemen. And then you got the guys who are just in their space, relaxing. I'm one of those guys. Obviously, I get a little hyped up or whatever, but for me, you see that. And I think that scene for me was very relatable because it's just you see it all. And it's also too in terms of positions. Usually the guy that's pretty rowdy are the bigger guys, the guys that block and stuff, so they're constantly smashing heads, right? And the guys tend to be the most relaxed are for example, the kickers. All they do is go out there and kick. They don't tackle. They don't do anything. They need to be in a calm space, right? So, and it's funny because our current kicker, Justin Medlock, he actually has earplugs. He's I need to block out every noise. Everything needs to be calm, right? Think about a game that's 100 miles per hour, just right. But it just depends on that position, right? So when the coach is yelling at us, we interpret it, we listen, but it's how we take it, right? Are we gonna, right? So yeah.
No, I love those. that was probably one of my favorite moments of the movie, was to just see how they all handled that. And again, I mean, just as being an actor, I mean, when you're in the audition room, you don't see people smashing their heads, but
Yeah.
but you certainly see people dealing with their nerves, or in different ways. Some people talk so much, some people are just dead quiet, and some people are doing breathing exercises. It's everybody, as you said, relates to it in such a different way. But yeah, this film certainly has a lot more humor. I mean, even in the like, there's hardly any team spirit amongst them. They're just like they, and you can understand why they were in so much conflict, because the coach would probably, I took that as because of the way they were being treated or compared to each other. And I mean, do you think generally there is a lot of connection and team spirit on teams, or have you even experienced, like in this film, where they're all like tearing and getting into fights and stuff like that?
Yeah. So also too, I think it's relatable too in terms of what job or field you're in terms of corporation. It's all about competition. Even if like you're on a sales team, obviously it's your team, but you're trying to be, ahead of the leaderboard or have the most whatever.
Right.
It's the same thing, but my job is interesting because we're teammates, and stuff like that. And, I might be best friends with, my running back or whatever. But at the end of the day, if I get hurt or I don't perform, he's going to take my job. Right.
Yeah.
There's that competitive nature between us, where we're trying to fight to make sure that we're the starter, that we're the guy. And you see that throughout practice. You see that in training camp when initially we're all just trying to make the team, right? So there's that.
Oh,
but
yeah.
The moment that we are, that doesn't matter is game day, because everyone knows their role, everyone knows their position, and you can see that even you're trying to steal my spot. Well, today's game day, like that doesn't matter, because we have a different competition ahead of us. We have a different opponent ahead of us. Right? During the week, I have an opponent and competition amongst my teammates, but during game day, it's the other opponent. So it's definitely
they do come together when it's time to play in this film.
And you saw the one scene where the lineman and the other guy, the African American, they clearly hated each other. They were butting heads, right? And it's not that extreme, but and you can kind of see the diversity there too, right? It's not that extreme, but there is that competition.
Yeah.
But you see that moment in game day where they kind of just said, yeah, and he's just like, yeah. It's like it didn't
That's
matter,
right.
it didn't even exist, right? So yeah.
Yeah, I really love that contrast in behavior. And yeah, that's so true as you put it. Actually, I hadn't thought of it that clearly, that it was once the game happened, all that competitiveness was gone, because they knew that they had to be pretty much on the same team. A couple of things you also brought up, which you really saw with, like you had said, like when you make mistake, like how do you keep you're going to get blamed for it, or you're haunted by it. And you really see that with Nick Nolte, because he had dropped the ball. Mm-hmm. I mean, he keeps flashing to like, how did I drop, or how did I miss that ball? I'm getting older, aches and pains. And I love how that just kept, going in his head over and over and over again. But this is really quite remarkable how truthful it is, yet also so funny. I mean, even when they lose towards the end, and then Charles Durning, who's one of the coaches, screaming at them, and then one of the players just loses it on him. There's no more team spirit, it's not about the game anymore. It's all about business and winning, and you guys don't know shit. And even though it's so funny just because he's going ballistic and he's this huge guy against this little guy, but I thought that was really where the spine of the film lies. That for these guys, it was no more about what it was when they were young. It was all about the business or winning money.
Yeah.
Did that pop out to you when you watched it?
Yeah. So two things. The first one is with Phil Elliott, the main guy who dropped the football.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're always under the microscope, and nowadays, because we're on TV, we're live. I'm not just, if I make a bad mistake or play or whatever, obviously I told you the film doesn't lie,
Yeah.
but sometimes I play in 30, 40,000 people, and I play on TV, and I know my friends and family are watching. I make a mistake. So not only if we make a mistake, it's also, we know that everyone knows, right? And that messes with our head. I've been in those situations too, right? But I think also nowadays, it's like I said, and I keep reverting back to, how does that player take it? Is it going to just beat them up? Or are they going to continue to, just forget about it, fix it, and go on, right? So we're constantly under the microscope. And because there's so much, stage in terms of TV and all that stuff in front of us, and knowing our friends and family, like, I make a mistake. Sometimes I get a text if I'm on TV. I remember one time I was on TV and, I made a mistake, and my friend's like, man, like, what happened here? That messes with us, man.
Oh, I bet.
Like,
yeah.
They and that's one of my pet peeves. If you're not playing, and like, don't do that. And I think the people in my inner circle
right.
know better than that, right? But also too, in terms of like football's not fun anymore. You notice how in Friday Night Lights it was more of a job, right? And you notice how here, where it is a job, they want it to be fun, right? At the same time, right? So it's funny how those two kind of collide, where it's like they're both in business, but at the same time, it's like they're trying to have fun.
They really are, yeah.
They can't, right? And I think also too, and I'm not trying to go back to Friday Night Lights, but the one scout asked, the quarterback Mike, he says, like, is football fun to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
Right?
And he says yes, but his eyes say something else, right?
Right, because for me, I said I'm going to retire from football. Obviously, like, a lot's going to happen, but I said if I don't enjoy it, I'm not going to do that to myself, because there needs to be that sense of joy. Yeah. Right? Like, there needs to be that sense of joy, and even as professional athletes, we enjoy it, right? But when it becomes more business, more pressure, right? And you saw that in both films. It became business.
Very much so.
It became pressure. And it's like, I don't even know if I really want football. Phil obviously realized, man, like, I don't want this. It came towards the end that he's like, I don't want this anymore. Right? So.
Yeah, no, I love that he just sort of, walked out when it just was getting more and more ridiculous, and investigating him and finding ways to get rid of him. And I love the look on the coach's face. Like he knows he knows he's wrong. Like, he's going with what the corporate, the people running the show are basically saying and thinking. It's like, let's just, he's a guy on the bench. Let's just find a way to get rid of his contract. It was so underhanded. And then, when he gets tossed the football and he intentionally doesn't catch it.
Yeah.
I love that. It's just it was such a perfect way to end it.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, you see, that's where I can't relate, because I haven't retired or quit football yet. Right.
Right.
I will say I did have a moment, before I went into the league after university. I didn't get drafted right away. And, it was just 1 year of me just trying to make it into the league. And obviously I got my shot and things worked out. But I did have a moment where I was on the football field doing sprints. And I went to school for criminal justice. And, I had an opportunity to be a police officer. And, I was on the field and I was contemplating, because I kept getting cut. And I was just like, man, like, do I finally just call it quits? And, like, so that was the moment for me where I realized, like, it can come and go. But at the same time, it's like, are you ready for that transition? Right? At that moment, I was not ready. You know what
Right.
I mean? I was not ready. Whereas I
Yeah.
told you now, as time goes on and as I have different avenues and stuff happening for me, I'm not retiring from football. I'm not saying that over here. But I'm saying if football came to an end, I would be okay.
Right.
Whereas at university, 3-4 years ago, when I noticed that football might potentially come to an end, I was not okay.
And that's a good point. And you see that with Elliott at the end. Even though he walks out, we don't know where he goes. Right? He doesn't know anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But he had the guts and the courage to just strike out when it just became, ridiculous for him, and underhanded and manipulated and stuff like that. But I really think the fact that the woman he gets with, I think she really makes him think about what he's doing, because she was so much more in tune with, like, how his body was battered, how he was sort of deluding himself as to why that was a good thing. She was like, "This, I don't think this is a good thing," But he sort of romanticized it all, and finally just called it quits. I mean, I thought it was a perfect way to end it. I just thought it was really, really great.
Yeah.
Was there any other last thoughts you had on this film?
Yeah. Just to kind of piggy off what you just said, sometimes it does take that moment for the player to realize, like, maybe this isn't for me, right? And
Right.
and that's why I'm addressing, like, it's what football has opened so many doors and avenues for me. Don't get me wrong, and I'm thankful for it to even be doing this. But like I told you, I don't want to be described as just a football player.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you don't know me, I probably won't tell you I play football. Sometimes it is hard because of my stature, so people just assume. I kind of jokingly say I play golf, but that never goes well. But anyways, long story short,
say you're a trainer, maybe fitness trainer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Long story short, I think guys are more accepting if when the time comes, the time comes. And, towards the end, you can see that Phil just said, you know what, this is the time. And whether it's through somebody else to help you realize that or just your own self, it's so true.
Yeah, well put. And yeah, it certainly ends on that note. But this isn't on any major streamers. You can rent or buy it on YouTube for anyone who is watching and interested in seeing it, or get the physical media, either DVD or Blu-ray, is quite easy to find. Well, Johnny, thanks again so much for talking so openly about your experiences and as an athlete, and the ups and downs, and how accurate these films were to what you know about football, what you've been through, and just talking about them in general. I really had a good time talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rob. This was honestly amazing. I do recommend watching those two films because they are pretty close. North Dallas 40, like half and half a little bit, but because sometimes I like for people to see my perspective in terms of what I deal with, what football players deal with, because it has its moments. So those films I definitely recommend. So yeah, thank you for having me, Rob.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime. And thank you for those of you who are watching today. And if anyone is on their first time on this video podcast, please consider subscribing by pressing the subscribe button, which you can find right beside the description box below. And for anyone watching the replay right now, you'll see the my logo floating above my head to your top left. You can also click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I go live or release a new video. Well, Johnny, thanks again, and we'll see everyone soon.